Welcome to the George C. Marshall Foundation Library and Archives in Lexington, Virginia. The foundation was created at the request of President Harry Truman, who felt that a man of Marshall's stature and long government service deserved his papers to be gathered at a library and foundation in his name.
How long did you work for the foundation?
About a year and a half.
Okay. And what did you do during your time here?
I got to play detective, which is something I very much enjoy.
I have handled every book in that library while doing a rearrangement of the shelves, and I'm currently involved in trying to take all the minutiae and the duplications out of the files so that we can consolidate for additional collections.
The archives are kept behind this bank vault door to control temperature and humidity as well as security. Welcome to the 3-story archival vault containing more than 500 collections, the largest of which is the George C. Marshall papers. Recently, the foundation has embarked on a project to digitize the entire Marshall paper collection and make them freely available through the library catalog.
The reason we're doing this is to accept more documents that would support the memory and the mission that Marshall represented.
It's important to learn from history. And for some people, that can be done very well in a museum. But for others, it hits home when you're handling the items themselves.
Each morning when I open the bank vault door and I turn on the light, I say, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen," because the collections here are not merely documents and photographs and maps, but they are experiences. They are people's stories and lives, and they shouldn't be forgotten. So I not only have the responsibility of taking care of those items, but in making sure that those stories are told.
Probably the single most interesting was a correspondence from, and it was the original, signed by Winston Churchill.
I have 3 favorite items.
It was relative to his not being able to be here. He was invited, but not being able to be here for the commemorative celebration for opening of the library.
I found a set of love letters.
He suggested that in the letter, that it was a medical issue that was keeping him from coming. I didn't get any details, but as a result of that, the librarian, Melissa Davis, was able to do some research and get a lot more detail on the subject.
These 2 wrote very frequently to each other. And there were like a couple dozen letters there, never used the same pet name. They got very creative, but they never really called each other by their first names either. It was always some sort of a Dear Honey or Johnny or something.
I have reviewed letters from 3 different presidents that were also originals in these files.
And that kind of impressed me, that he didn't quite know where he was, and she definitely didn't know where he was, but that they still managed to keep in touch and keep that love for each other.
Numerous senators and representatives, ambassadors and other dignitaries.
Here at the foundation, we also have what we call the Friedman Room.
One of the most popular collections here is the William and Elizabeth Smith Friedman collection.
There's always this cool spy feeling about it.
They were pioneering code breakers from World War I through World War II, and after retirement, they decided to leave their private library and papers here to the foundation to be available for research.
We didn't have James Bond, but I think we kind of had Q.
The term, the greatest generation, is always applied, I think, to those folks that served during World War II and subsequent to that, possibly in Korea as well. But the fact that he was one of the most prominent of those folks suggests that everything that we can preserve about his involvement in various American activities, both militarily and as the Secretary of State, can be hugely important.
The 3rd item would actually be back here.
This is the map table from General Marshall's Pentagon office. The map is a copy of the last Corps-level D-Day map in existence, belonging to General Leonard Giroux, who carried it ashore, Omaha Beach. This Academy Award was given to Frank McCarthy for his production of the movie Patton. Frank McCarthy was the chief of the General Headquarters Secretariat during World War II, and he traveled extensively with General Marshall during the war. At the end of his Hollywood career, he donated his government and Hollywood papers and the Oscar to the Marshall Foundation. This Nobel Peace Prize was given to General Marshall in 1953 for the work that he did in saving Europe after the war and the plan that bears his name, the Marshall Plan.
Probably the closest I'm ever gonna get to one. And so it's really cool to see that although he was many things, he was a soldier, but he was also a man of peace. I mean, if it wasn't for the Marshall Plan, who knows what would have happened to Europe?
This is Mussolini's ceremonial sword. It was captured at Lake Como by 10th Mountain Division and given to General Marshall for display here at the Foundation.
I've always enjoyed history, but it's never felt connected to me until I began to work here.
This sword was given to First Captain George Marshall upon his graduation from VMI. The Overseas Press Club offered General Marshall $1 million and this gold-plated typewriter to write his memoir. Marshall declined, told them to keep their money, but he gratefully accepted the typewriter and used it to type his retirement correspondence.
Can you describe your experience here?
Would it be too cliche to say educational?
I don't think so.
Educational.
Okay.
Well, it's overwhelming in size for me.
It's really cool.
For a lot of people, maybe the current youngest generation and the generation before that, Marshall's role in history is not as well understood and certainly not as prominently discussed today.
So I work at the public library in town as well, and there were a few girls who came in looking for some books on World War II. They knew nothing of Marshall.
Having the archives here and encouraging researchers to come here and use it, I think we're going to have a library that truly is a living library with young folks, different generations, getting to highlight Marshall in their research and keep that generation's memory alive.
It's something that needs to be remembered, that there's plenty of museums dedicated to World War II, and there's plenty of places that are historical markers for World War II. But I think it's the people that fought and lived that tend to be forgotten. But they're not forgotten here. They live on.
I hope you've enjoyed this short visit to the George C. Marshall Foundation Library and Archives. If you'd like to learn more or come to visit, please email me at librarian@marshallfoundation.org. Thank you.